Okay, and today's still nice, right? We've had the rainiest winter that I could remember, coldest and rainiest. Okay, so last week we did, for the last 2 weeks actually, we did Perek Tzadik Aleph 91. And now we're flipping the numbers. We're going to do, instead of 9-1, we're going to do 1-9, 19. Perek Yud Tes, Perek 19. When I was thinking of what I wanted to learn with you today and next week, so a lot of times I don't usually like get my own, get myself in the way of choosing a perek. I usually choose what I think is appropriate for you. But because it's Adar, I said, I want to learn something that, thank you, Dahlia, that makes me happy and that will make you happy, something happy. So now Tehillim has real life in it. That means not all real life is so easy. And David HaMelech, when he wrote Tehillim, he a lot of times wrote when things were challenging for him. So it wasn't so clear to me which parak I wanted to learn with you. And then I decided that Yud Tes 19 is the parak of Tehillim that the Vilna Gaon says is appropriate for the holiday of Shavuos. You thought I was going to say Purim, right? No, Shavuos, the holiday of the receiving of the Torah. Yud Tes is the Shir Shal Yom for Shavuos, according to the Vilna Gaon. And listen, we're going to see in this parak of Tehillim how Hashem can make us happy, and really how David HaMelech is advising us to achieve happiness. Okay, so let's learn 19. Actually, chapter 19 is usually one of the ones when I give a Tehillim class. It's usually the first one that I do, and somehow I didn't. I overlooked this with you guys, right? We didn't learn. Miriam, we ever did Tehillim 19 together? Did we? No. Okay. Okay. So then we'll do 19. Okay, and we're going to do it slowly. There's no rush. And I want you to, mamish, get the tools for the whole Tehillim. So lamanatseach. Lamanatseach means two things. I mean, it could mean many things. And it's the first word of many chapters of Tehillim. It could either mean for God, for Hashem, who is the one who conducts everything. The Menasech means Hashem is the victor. Hashem is the one who is arranging everything in the universe. So Lamanasech, to Hashem who is eternal, to the eternal one, because Netzach means eternity. To Hashem who is eternal. Or on a different level, Lamanasech means that this chapter of Tehillim was taught to the Levi, who was the conductor of the choir that was in the shul that David HaMelech went to, and that eventually would become the choir of the Beis HaMikdash. I don't know if you know this, but what was it like in the Beis HaMikdash? What was like the service like in the Beis HaMikdash? Do you know that there was a permanent choir there of people from the tribe of Levi who were gifted with beautiful voices and a feeling of music. And there was also a permanent orchestra in the Beis HaMikdash, an orchestra. And they had all of these amazing instruments, and they would play music in the Beis HaMikdash while the karbanos were going on. Now, that's why the non-Jewish world chose, the Christian world chose to put music into their churches, because they wanted to mimic everything Jewish. And that's why now, of course, we're not allowed to make music on Shabbos. And it became a thing now in the young world of, the young religious kids to have on Chol HaMoed and on Rosh Chodesh to bring musical instruments to shul when it's permitted on Chol HaMoed and on Rosh Chodesh, and just to sing Hallel with musical instruments. This became a thing to do now, and um, it became a thing to do, and when it first happened, they first started doing it, it was sort of like a hippie thing, like like a new agey kind of Baal Tshuva kind of a thing. And now you have it, incorporated in regular mainstream shuls, a lot of them. I know that here in Harnof, we have on Sukkot. I don't know if we have it on Pesach also. Maybe an apartment building across the street that has a very big knisa, a very big lobby, and the first day of Chol HaMoed for the chutznikim, that means for the second day of Chol HaMoed for Israelis, they make a real yeshivish mainstream minyan with musical instruments, and everybody from the neighborhood just walks over and just sings the Hallel. It's beautiful. So that's in the Beis Hamikdash. They had music going on, and when we learned, I think we learned Kuf Lamed Vav Al Naras Bavel, no Kuf Lamed Zayin. I think we learned it, but whatever it is, says Chazal tell us that the music of the Beis Hamikdash was consciously forgotten by the Levium, because that music was so sublime, was so beautiful, was so spiritual, was so above and beyond, that we didn't want it to go into exile. We didn't want the non-Jewish world to hear that music. And so we refused to sing those songs. And the Levium, who were forced to sing, they chose to not sing. And many of them were killed in the times of the first destruction of the first Beis Hamikdash. In the second Beis Hamikdash, which was 70 years later, there were those who remembered some of the songs, but not all. And now we don't really have a tradition. Some say that Kol Nidre, the way that the Ashkenazim sing Kol Nidre, is a Beis Hamikdash song. But since the songs of the Beis Hamikdash were perhaps more connected to the Sephardic way, so we're not quite sure how those songs sang. But the Lamanasech, this was whenever we have a parak of Tehillim that starts with Lamanasech, it means that David HaMelech himself composed the melody to say this chapter, and he taught it to one of the Leviim, who eventually taught it to the Leviim in the times of the Shlomo HaMelech Beis HaMikdash, and that melody came down to us. So now we don't have it. But I once heard a very great Rav who years and years ago, there's a Rav who you have his son in England. Here his name is Rabbi Glazerson. I think that his son in England shortens his name maybe to Glazer. I think, I'm not sure. But Rabbi Glazerson here in Beit Vagan, he's an older man. And he's a violinist. He plays violin. He's very musical. And I remember once hearing him try to figure out the trup, the musical cancellation of the Tehillim, and it was very confused. We don't know how to sing Tehillim. Anyway, Lamanat there's a special melody here, Mizmor LeDavid, a song by David. And here's David HaMelech is going to tell us 2 levels of increasing your godly consciousness, 2 levels. The first level is going to take 7 psukim, and the second level is going to be till the end of the chapter. Here's what he says first. And Hashamayim mesaprim kavod el, u'masei yadav magid harakia. The heavens tell us the story of how awesome and how honorable is God and how brilliant is God. And the sky teaches us about how creative Hashem is. I just paraphrased that and I gave a few interpretations. Basically, the words actually mean the sky tells the honor, the glory of God, and the work of his hands is what the lower sky tells us or teaches us. The idea is the sky is a teacher to us. For those of you who say Perek Shira, you recognize this pasuk because this is the first pasuk in Perek Shira. Hashamayim Omrim, the sky says. What does the sky teach us? And what does the sky tell us? The sky tells us that God is glorious and that God is creative. He's the creator and he's the kavod. The kavod means he's the source of all glory. The sky tells us that. So you look up at the sky and you're going to see it and you're going to listen to it and it's telling you that. I'm just gonna do the next two psukim, and then we're gonna go back and do three psukim the commentary. Yom liyom yabia omer, and the daytime when day follows day, that also talks about God's greatness. V'layla l'layla, and when night goes into night, when night follows night, yechavadat. It also tells us about God. So the sky tells us about God, the Shamayim, the one level of sky. There's really 7 levels of sky, 7 levels of sky. But the two that are mentioned here is just Shamayim and Rakia. The 2 levels of sky, maybe one of them, as far as what we can relate to, is the sky that we see, the blue sky, and then the above that is the outer space sky that we can see when when there's spaceships. The sky talks about God. The day talks about God, and the night talks about God. So what is that? And I'm just going to do again the 4th pasuk. Ein omer. They're not really talking. Ve'ein dvarim. They're not saying words. The sky, the day, the night. It's not really speaking words that I'm speaking now. Beli nishma kolam. Their voice isn't heard in the way that we normally communicate. That's the first 4 psukim of the pair. And again, I want to go back and I'm going to go back and review it for us to understand. Now, I'm sure you understand what David Melch is saying, but let's just say it. David Melch says, when you look at the sky and when you look at, again, we're going to use 2 layers of sky, and I'm making this 21st century commentary because 500 years ago, 400 years ago, 100 years ago, they never saw anything but the blue sky. And then at night, when the sun would go down, they would see a black sky. And they couldn't really figure out what's the blue sky, what's the black sky. Now we know that the blue sky that we see is an optical illusion, that really the sky is not blue. But in the daytime, when the sun is shining and there's no clouds, so somehow the light from the sun reflects off of the air particles that are in the atmosphere above planet Earth. And the air particles and the reflection of the light make it appear to be blue. The sky is not blue, but it looks to us to be blue. And the sky is not even black, because when you go and you look at the people who, let's say, go into space and they're showing you what they see and it looks black, the sky is not black either, because blue and black are colors, and the colors are only perceptive by our eyes. But the sky and the lower level sky that we see and the upper level sky, the Shamayim and the Rakia, they're visible to us in a way that God allows us to see, but that's not really what it looks like. Nevertheless, when you look at the sky, you can be inspired to come close to Hashem. When you look at the sky and you stare at it, whether there are clouds or not clouds, whether it's a sunny day, usually not today, right this second, it's a beautiful sunny day in Yerushalayim Kodesh, and the sky is a beautiful blue. And so our tzaddikim and mikubalim advise us, if you need to meditate, you need to relax, you need to daven, or you need to prepare yourself for davening, go outside and find a place to sit where you're private and just stare at the open sky and allow your eyes to sort of like travel up and allow yourself to feel the huge expanse of the sky and allow yourself to feel like carried with the sky. And that will inspire you to see how big Hashem is. That's what David Melch is telling us here now. Use the sky and looking at it as a source of inspiration. The sky when the sky is blue, the sky when the sky is black. If you're in an airplane, use it. The sky is actually talking to us. Now, then at night, we're going to look at the stars and we're going to look at the whole Ma'arechet HaShamayim. And we're going to be awed by it. Now, you could be bored by it. You could ignore it. But David HaMelech is telling us that one day he decided to write a parak of Tehillim. Now, we don't have an historical context for this parak of Tehillim. We don't, it doesn't say he was running away from Shaul. It doesn't say where he was. It just says one day he decided to write about how to inspire yourself by looking at the infinity of the sky, the almost infinity of the sky. So I'm going to tell you something that happened to me yesterday that I spent actually a good 20 minutes researching. And I don't usually research something unless I think that it's holy. Somebody on one of these religious, like really religious, frum, unscientific, but spiritual, let's say, inspiring people, sent me a video, and was like wowed by it. What was it? So this person, I don't know, somebody must have sent it to him. You know how it is that videos get sent around in the frum world, in the religious world. Somebody starts it, and then it goes around viral. So he sent me this video. Here's how it goes. There's a picture of a plant. Actually, it was like a tree. And the one who is speaking on the video is some kind of an inventor. Okay, maybe one of you sent it to me. I forget already who sends me things. And he took a cable, a very small, thin cable, and he clipped it to one of the leaves on this tree. And he attached that cable with a wire to a system. And he said, we're going to hear the song of the tree. And the tree is making these sounds like you hear. It's not like a melody like, of the nigun. It sounds very melodic, very harmonious, very eerie, and beautiful. And the Rav wrote, like, could you imagine? This is like Hashem telling us the song of creation. So I said, like, whoa, I never saw such a thing. Let me see what this is all about. And I began to do I asked horticulturist Google, like, what is this? And I began researching. And here's what this guy did. And now they made already a few of these, because once one person has a chiddush, has a new invention, somebody else steals it from him, improves it a little bit, tries to make more money. Listen to what they did. They took, everything has pulsation. When people say that they can measure your aura, so what they're really measuring is the electromagnetic waves that are coming out of our bodies. We all emit, we give off electricity. You know that because if you touch you walk in your house and the rug is, and you touch a handle of the door handle, you can get a shock because electricity goes through. We conduct electricity. We also conduct magnetism and electromagnetic energy. Everything does. Everything in the world does. The thing that conducts electricity the least is something, let's say a rock, something that was never alive. But plants and animals, everybody conducts electricity. Everything has electromagnetic energy. So this guy, thank you, my sweetie pie. So this guy, he took a sensor. He took really it's a sensor, and he attached it to a machine that picks up movement and energy and translates the energy into sound. Now he chose the sounds, like he said, and this is a computer, these are a whole bunch of computer geeks. He said, okay, if it makes this kind of a pulsation, it'll sound like a cello with a note of C. And if it makes this kind of a pulsation, a faster one, it will go up the cello up to D and to E. Every single pulsation got a different sound from a different instrument that he chose. But what he was doing is basically translating the sounds of the plants and the trees into musical sounds, and that's what you hear. Exactly as what I'm doing right now. Right now, I'm in my house in my study, And I'm talking to a box, a box of plastic and whatever this thing is. And I'm talking to this one of these guys. So what do you hear? You're hearing my voice translated into electricity, and the electricity goes through, I don't know how, up in the air, into the clouds, jumps all the way to England, and you hear it coming out of your machine in my voice. That same way. Now you're here. I don't know what you're hearing because none of us could hear the other person. Like just like we don't know, like what to me looks like the color blue, and you'll say, "Oh yeah, that's blue," but you'll see it as what I see red. We don't know how the other person's sensory organs operate. But whatever it is, you're hearing what you think is my voice, and I'm speaking in what I think is my voice. But that voice of mine has been translated into electricity and then retranslated into sound. That's what this guy did. And he puts this sensor on all kinds of plants and trees, and you hear the most amazing sounds. Now, it's not the actual sound the tree makes because he translated the vibrations and pulsations into piano and cello and violin and different scales, and they made up made up like a whole sound system. But basically, what you're hearing is this that the tree is actually singing. Now tell me, do you think that David HaMelech knew that when he wrote this pasuk? That the world is singing to God. The sky is singing, the day is singing, the night is singing. Of course he knew that. He was a prophet. He just perhaps didn't know that there was going to be in the 21st century, there's going to be some kind of a mechanism that's going to allow us to hear it with our ears with all kinds of apparatus. Now, there are people who will say that they will put their ear to the ground and they can hear the rumbling of the earth. There are people who will say that they can do that. And they do. They hear something. I'm not talking about if you're living in the city, but if you're in the middle of the desert, you're in the middle of a forest, you're away from everything, and you put your ear on the ground, you can hear the thunder and the rumbling and the whatever you hear. 19, Naomi, 19. Yud test. So that's what this pasuk is taught now. And then I began to listen to the different sounds, and it's really remarkable. Now again, it's not it's a translation of their sound, but he put it on a very, very old tree, like an 800-year-old tree. He put this sensor equipment, and that tree sounded like deep and rumbling and like an old grandfather, just like in the Lord of the Rings. Was that the Lord of the Rings, that movie? I forgot what movie I saw 100,000 years ago, that the trees like were moving and talking. And so, yes, the sensory that we're in, absolutely, that Hashem is showing us. Hashem is allowing us. We're so privileged. Hashem is allowing us through technology to see things that we could only imagine in our minds. And nature, we're so far from nature. One of my friends was telling me yesterday that it's such a pity that, I love Har Nof and I want to stay here till Mashiach comes, but it's not like we have lots of parks here. Every inch of space was taken up by building another building so that people could live here. And we know that, so many people and so many of you that are listening, are conflicted by, I want to be in nature, but I need to be where there's a school and there's a shopping center and there's, a mikveh and there's a, whatever. So Baruch Hashem, we have beautiful areas. So we have Chol Hamoed trips that we can go into nature. But people who live in nature, they mamish sense. They sense the plants. They can feel them. And there's a whole thing about, I know you're one of your princes over there. I don't like your royal family. I don't like them. But I know one of them, he talks to his plants and he says that they talk back to him. And okay, whatever. But there's such a thing that there are farmers who can taste the land. They can they'll put dirt in their mouth and they can see if the wheat needs more of this or if the trees need more of that by tasting the ground. So that's what these psukim mean. The psukim mean, look at nature and see Hashem through observing nature. That's what the whole first part of this parak is, parak Yutes. The first whole part, and it's universal for all humans. Any human being, if they just meditate long enough, if they calm their mind down, and if they pay attention, because we go through life, we're running, we're always running. But if we pay attention, then we see Hashem's brilliance and creativity and love and beauty in nature. In nature. I remember my mother, she should rest in peace and have a Gitzah Gan Eden and be a good space for all of us. She, in her older years, she would love to sit outside and just look around. She would look at the birds and she would look at the grass and at the sky and she would feel Hashem. She would like be laughing with Hashem. One time she came in with, at that point she was ready, towards, the second, she was in her early 90s and maybe late 80s. And she went out. We had a helper helping us. I couldn't lift her and all of that. So we had a helper, a wonderful Filipina, and they went outside for a walk. And out of nowhere, it started to rain. But it was in the springtime, so it was beautiful weather at. And here in Yerushalayim HaKadosh, we don't have rain in the spring summer. It was a funny thing. It was like a sun shower. And I remember she came in and she was wet. I said, what is this? Did somebody spritz you with the hose? And Miriam, the Ozeret, the helper, said, no, it started raining. And my mother said, Hashem was laughing at us. Hashem was laughing on us. He was like making a joke with us. He was sprinkling us. That's how she looked at nature. She didn't look at nature as it was raining. It was like Hashem. Hashem makes cute little birds. Hashem makes beautiful flowers. Now, again, she was already in her very late stage of life. And thank you, Hashem, she was well. But she took the time to look at nature and and she didn't have time her whole life. My mother was a very hard worker. She worked hard. But now she had time to look at the birds, and they would all come near her feet. All the birds, all the little birds here, and when she sat outside, they would all come to her. And she didn't give out bread or crumbs or anything. They just sensed a holy person, a pure holy person. They would all sit by her feet. These little starling birds all over that are here in Harnof. So that's what the whole beginning of the parak is talking about. I'll review again. If you look at the sky now, look at the sky, you'll see trillions of stars. And according to science, and this is totally their theory, I don't know if they could prove this, but what they say is that the stars that we're seeing now already died thousands of years ago, but we're just seeing the reflected light that's coming through the sky. It takes thousands of years for something far away to the light that we should see it. That's called a light year, how long it takes light to travel in 1 year. So they're saying you look at the stars in the sky, not the planets, but the stars. And most of what we see, those little glittery, twinkle, twinkle little star, they don't exist anymore. Could you imagine? And we're seeing something that doesn't exist. Now, again, I'm not an astronomer. I don't know if that's a theory, if it's provable, but how could you prove it? These stars, either if they don't exist, so what are we seeing? And if they do exist, so how can you get there? They're trillions of miles away. I think it's really in the realm of geophysics, which is a science. So, but the sky is talking to you, and the sky is saying, there is a creator. This didn't happen by accident. There's no way that this could have happened by accident. Look how complex it is. Look how genius it is. Nothing is bumping into each other. Every once in a while you get like these reports, people who like to make people agitated. They say there's a meteor, there's an asteroid, heading towards planet Earth. It's going to crash. It's going to blow it, right? All these science fiction movies, right? No, that doesn't happen. We've been here for a long time, and we never had we weren't blown up by an errant asteroid. Hashem has everything coordinated so properly. I remember when I was teaching in America, when I taught a class the solar system. And I was teaching also. I taught Torah in the morning, and then this math and science in the afternoon. So I wanted to make a model of this. Like when you're in sixth grade, you want to make a model of the solar system. So I was a teacher. I wanted to make a model of the solar system, and I just had to jiggle I don't know 7 or 8 different balls with the thing, and I kept bumping them into each other. You do it with a hanger, and you try to make, and they were all the Earth kept crashing into the moon kept crashing into the sun, and everything was and I said to the class, I said, this is a perfect example of why Hashem is Hashem and we're people. I can't even make a diagram, like a diagram. I can't even take 7 ping pong balls and set them up in such a way that they don't crash into each other. And Hashem is creating trillions upon trillions of he calls it's called in Torah the army of Hashem in Shemayim, the Tzva HaShemayim, the innumerable, and they're all coordinated. And guess what? Now I'm going to tell you something Kabbalistically. Every one of the celestial beings, whatever, bodies, planets, comets, black holes, meteors, every single one of those things that's in Shemayim has it has an angel attached to it, and that angel is attached to some person, place, or thing in planet Earth. Everything is about the operation of planet Earth. That's why, yes, you have, when Rabbi Nachman says that when we eat something, we should ask Hashem in the davening before we eat. In the davening, in the shacharis, we should ask Hashem that everything that we eat should be healthy. And how does he phrase it in Likutei Moharan? He says, ask Hashem, please Hashem, command the energy of the planet that's shining onto this piece of toast. Command the energy, command the angel that's in charge of the planet, that's in charge of this piece of toast, that he should beam into this healthy energy for me. Because everything in the Shemayim is for a Jew. Everything in the outer worlds is for a Jew. Trillions and trillions, gazillions, no number for a Jew. And it's talking about Hashem's glory and Hashem's creativity. And any scientist who's an honest person, who thinks, who observes the heavens and the planets and the whole cosmos, any one of them has to become enamored, in love with the creator, the coordinator. They might not call it God because, as you know, God has negative, people don't like the word because it means if you believe in God, then you have to be good and you have to be moral, 10 commandments, all that kind of stuff, religion, all that kind of stuff. Religion has a bad rap. But any scientist, an astronomer, anyone in any of the NASA, any of those organizations, if any of them are real and are doing the work, then they're in awe that they can predict. They can send a spaceship and they can predict where it's going to go and how long it's going to take, because there's a map of the trillions of bodies in the sky. Okay, I could go on like this forever and ever and ever, but you get the idea, right? So look at the sky and become inspired. Now look at the day and the night. Look at the day and the night, and the consistency of the day and the night, and the consistency of time, because day and night represents time. So first we did the sky. Now let's look at time. Does time exist? In olden days, how did they manage without a clock? How do they do that? You know that in Shuk Machane Yehuda, there's a clock, there's a sundial. It's on Rehov Yafo. They made that building that sundial is on. They made it a permanent, like they're not allowed to take it down, like an antiquities thing, because it's a very ancient sundial. And the sun, on a sunny day, the sun shines on it, and you can tell what hour of the day it is by where that sundial is. Now that sundial is on the top of a building, but people would make sundials on the ground. The natives, the Native Americans, Indians, they knew exactly what time it was. And people were able to read the sky, and they would know, is it 2 a.m., 3 a.m., 4 a.m., People became expert in time by understanding the movement of the celestial bodies in the sky. So that idea of time is an amazing thing. The fact that we are in a leap year this year, it's an amazing thing. I'm going to tell you an amazing, a beautiful limud zchus on all Jewish people, whether they're observant or not. Everyone this year is going to celebrate Pesach, even if they call it Passover. They're going to celebrate it according to the calendar, right? They're going to look on the calendar, and even Google has Passover on the right day. But Google doesn't know, and all the Jews who maybe they don't consider themselves observant, but they don't realize that we have a leap year this year, and so really, it should be today is the second day of Adar, Aleph, of the first Adar. If this wasn't a leap year, in 2 weeks from tomorrow would be Purim. That's a pretty scary thought. And then a month after that is Pesach. But this year, because our rabbis set us up a calendar, our rabbis became in charge of time. What do I mean by that? It means that when the Sanhedrin was still in existence, and when the Anshe Knesset Agdolu, when the Gemara was being formulated, and they stamped a calendar, Hashem himself agreed to the calendar. What do I mean? It means that this year, when we're going to be celebrating Purim, if it weren't a leap year, it really would be Pesach that day. And we're going to be eating bread and bagels and hamantash and all the chametz. Could you imagine the power of Torah Sheba'al Peh, of our rabbis who set us up a calendar? And they set us up a calendar because they have the right to do that. They're mandated to be able to do that. And why? Because Pesach always has to come out in the spring. And if we didn't have, what do we have, 7 leap years in 19 years, something like that? If we didn't have that, then we would have like the Muslim calendar, which their months are always shifting. Because if we didn't have a leap year, then this year Pesach would come out in March. Next year Pesach would come out in February. The year after that Pesach would come out in January. It wouldn't be the spring. So our rabbis were taught by Moshe Rabbeinu back how to make the calendar in such a way that Pesach always comes out in the springtime. That's the idea of time. What?
This year it comes out in April.
April. So that's it. It comes out in April only because it's always supposed to come out in April.
Leap year.
Right, exactly. Because if it didn't come out in April, it would come out in March, and next year in February, and next year, and there would be winter, and that would be right, and everything would be turning all around. Because that's how because the moon, the calendar of the moon and the calendar of the sun gets every few years they're 1 month off. That's why the Muslims will only have a lunar calendar and they don't know how to make a leap year. They have their 1 month of Ramadan. That's their holy month where they fast. And that month comes out every year, a different month. It's the same month in their calendar, but the months shift. Anyway, so time, we have to be amazed with Hashem and how Hashem expresses himself in time, right? Sunrise, sunset, predictable. You can now download an app that will tell you, an alarm, what time is sunrise. It will ring by sunrise, it will by the nates, it will ring by the shkia, by the sunset. And now again, I'm just reviewing Pasuk Dalet. Ein Omer, there's no words. Ve'ein Dvarim, there's no statements. The sun, the moon, the time. It's not that I'm talking about vocabulary. Bili nishma kolam, the world of nature. You can see Hashem's grandeur and greatness, and you can see Hashem's coordination and Hashem's brilliance without them having to utter a word. Just observe them. It's not like, you have a sign every once in a while in the sky, isn't God great? Like, it doesn't do that. It's just observing. So it's the Parak Yutes is calling on us to observe, to utilize nature, utilize the beauty of the way Hashem made the world. And remember that Hashem is in charge. If Hashem can make the sun rise, and Hashem put the sun exactly where it is, if it would be a couple of miles closer, planet Earth would burn up. If it would be a couple of miles further away from planet Earth, we would freeze to death. Hashem can coordinate trillions upon trillions of celestial bodies. Hashem can figure out how I'm going to pay the electric bill at the end of the month. That same Hashem can do it all. That's why the beginning of the parak says, you're going to see Hashem and his kindness and his involvement in your life through nature. Okay, b'chol haaretz yatsa kavan. Now, the Mishorer, David HaMelech, is telling us something interesting about the sun and the moon and about orbits. And we're going to see that there's a certain pasuk that people take out of context. When I first learned this parak of Tehillim trillions of years ago, I was laughing when I saw what it really means. Okay, so let's first see. B'chol haaretz, in the whole world, because remember that in Tehillim, the word Eretz means the world. Sometimes it means Eretz Yisrael, but most of the time it means planet Earth. B'chol haaretz yatsa kavam. The line of the sky, like the horizon line, is visible in the entire world. Ubiksei tevel, till the edges of the world, you see a horizon. And what does the horizon tell us? Now, I just found out, and forgive me if any of you are in that group, but I don't understand it at all. I just found out pretty recently that there's a group of people called flat earthers. They believe the world is flat. I don't think that's true. I think the world is round. But right, the world is flat is what they used to believe before Christopher Columbus sailed across the world and ended up coming back to the same place. I forgot what, right? Or he didn't fall off the end of the world. But the idea that there is an edge to the world, that there's a horizon line, that wherever you are in the world, you can see, that doesn't mean the world is flat. It means Hashem allowed you this idea of seeing the area where you're living in a workable way. I once, when I was a little girl, I saw a picture in a cartoon, and they made a picture of the world, and they showed, maybe it was like on one of these like children's like Sesame Street kind of things. They showed the world in a circle, right? And they showed a person in North America standing up. And they showed a person in Australia standing up, but they were standing backwards, like they were upside down, like because they were at the bottom of the earth. And I remember getting scared, like, I don't ever want to go to Australia because then you fall off. Because in the earth, right, if you're at the bottom, you're standing on the, right? So how does that work? To the edge of the inhabited world are the milehem, are the expressions of God's greatness. In other words, look at the sunrise, the sunset, look at the horizon line. Look at the, by the horizon line is when you see the astrology of every planet, and you see Hashem's awesomeness, Hashem's greatness. Lashemesh sam ohel bahem. And what did Hashem do? Hashem put a covering, an ohel, over the sun. Now, when David HaMelech wrote this, he didn't know, or maybe he did, about the layers of protection around planet Earth that protect us from the rays of the sun. And that the sun has a corona around it, and that there's an atmosphere that protects us, because the sun gives off very strong rays, and they would burn us. Even if they wouldn't burn us, it would be like microwaves. They would harm us. So Hashem created a tent, so to speak, for the sun to protect planet Earth. We need it, but we want to be protected from it. The Gemara says on this pasuk that when Mashiach is about to come, the Hashem will take the tent, the protection, off of the sun. Tzaddikim will be healed by the rays of the sun, and the wicked people will be destroyed by the rays of the sun. And now we know there's such a thing called the ozone layer around planet Earth. And we know that there's a hole, supposedly, in the ozone layer. And it's because we were using spray deodorants, and I don't know what they made up all these kinds of things about the hole in the ozone layer. I don't exactly know about that. But that's what the Medrash says. The Medrash says that there's a protection on this pasuk. Lashemesh sam ohel bahem. He put for the sun an ohel, a tent of a protection. And the sun and the earth itself has a protection. The sun has a protection around it. The earth has a protection around it. Also, the sun has a path, right? That it goes on, rises in the east, sets in the west. That's how it appears to us. We don't, right? So all of this is looking at Hashem in nature and looking at specifically the sun and the moon. Now, why did David HaMelech choose the sun and the moon? It doesn't talk about the moon here, but soon it does. Why does Hashem talk about the sun, the moon, the day, the light, the night, the day, right? Because in olden days, the pagans actually worshipped the sun and worshipped the moon. And you know that was not a stupid idea, because we know about our grandfather, Avram Avinu, that when he was born, just like with Moshe Rabbeinu, when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, the astrologers told Paro on that day that Moshe was born, he said, "Oh, your nemesis is born today. Kill all the babies who are born today." And of course, Yocheved hid Moshe Rabbeinu for 3 months, etc. Same thing happened with Avram Avinu. When Avram Avinu was born, the astrologers told Nimrod. Nimrod was the Paro of that day. He was the evil king of the world of that day. Nimrod. Nimrod, by the way, means "let us rebel." That's what Chas Hashem for us, but that was his name. He wanted to rebel against God. So when Avram Avinu was born, Nimrod's astrologers ran over to him and said, "A baby boy was born today that's going to overthrow your entire kingdom." So Avram Avinu's mother heard that, and so kill all the babies. So they took Avram Avinu, they put him into a cave. They hid him in a cave for 3 years, not 3 months, 3 years. And they would secretly bring him money, and however they supported him, and at the end of 3 years, when it was safe for him to come out because he was already big, and maybe they thought that Nimrod had forgotten about this, or he thought he killed him, whatever. At the end of 3 years, Avram Avinu comes out of the cave and he sees the sun, and he thinks the sun is the owner of the world because the sun, and he begins to worship the sun, Avram Avinu. And he sees the sun is moving through the sky. He's kissing, he's sending kisses, and he's bowing, whatever method of worship. He's a little boy, but he understood the sun is the God. Then he sees the sun goes down, gets dark. He thought, couldn't figure it out. Then he sees the moon comes up. He began to think the moon and the sun had a fight, and the moon was victorious, and so the moon is coming up. And the reason that the moon is so small is because it just had a fight with the sun, and it needs to regain its strength, but the moon is what you serve. He began to serve the moon. Then the moon went down, the sun came up. He said, now I understand. There's something above all of this that's coordinating all of this, and he is who I will serve. The owner of the sun and the puppeteer of the sun and the moon, there's something above. That's what I'm looking for. And that's why David HaMelech is in many Tehillims, at the end of Tehillim, he talks about all the forces of nature: animals, plants, rain, snow, dew, fruits, angels. All in the end of Tehillim, David HaMelech elaborates on looking at Hashem through all nature, through plants, through trees, through weather patterns, etc. But here he's just talking about sun and moon. Why? Because sun and moon was what they would worship. Let's just finish the first part. And the sun is like a groom who's eager to get married. He's running out of his chuppah. He's coming out of his bridle under the chuppah, right? He gets married. He has his kala on his arm, and he's, emerging victorious from his chuppah that he now got married. Yasis, so who is this? The sun. The sun bursts forth every morning, ready to do its job, ready to serve God, and he's as happy and as energetic and as optimistic and as positive as a chatan, a groom, and a bride and a groom leaving their chuppah and ready to take on the world. Yasis kigibor. He's happy like, and he's confident like a gibor. A gibor is a warrior. Larutz Orach. This warrior is going to take a run. The warrior is in good shape, and he's going to take a run. He's going to run in the morning exercise, or he's going to do a marathon, or he's going to do a war. But this warrior is strong, and so as the warrior is ready to go and to defeat the enemy, or the warrior is ready to go and take a run to strengthen his body, and it gives him happiness because he's confident. So too is the sun. The sun is confident, the sun is happy, the sun goes and does its job. And that's why, and what are we supposed to learn from that? We're supposed to learn that we're supposed to be also happy. Whatever our job is. Now, the sun has a pretty boring job. It just doesn't do anything. It just sits there and it moves around its orbit, or we move around it, whatever it is. The sun is not doing anything. It's not like accomplishing, it's not like raising kids, it's not cooking supper, it's not hosting guests, right? The sun is just being there. But nevertheless, the sun is overjoyed to shine on us right now, even though it's not doing anything. But because it's fulfilling Hashem's job, Hashem's task, Hashem gave the sun a list of things to do. And that list really just has one thing on it, and that is just shine. Okay, but the sun is glad to do its job. And it has confidence that it can do its job. What's the lesson for us? The lesson for us is every day Hashem gives us a list. What list did Hashem give you today? Hashem gave you a list. Depends on your circumstances. Do you have little kids at home? The list is get up, get dressed, get the kids up, give them breakfast, wash them up, get them to school. That's if you have little kids. If you have big kids, it's a different list. Whatever your list is of tasks. And how do we know what the list is? Whatever our obligations are. What's your life about? You have people that you're responsible for. You have a job to go to. You have, you guys were on my list today. Every single one of you was on the list. Hashem sent me a list from Shemaim at 12 o'clock Yerushalayim time, 10 o'clock your time. This is my list. So we have to be like the sun. The sun takes its job. And again, its job is very boring, but it's so happy to do its job because it's what Hashem wants. We have to learn from that. Whatever our job is, it could be boring, it could be tedious, it could be repetitive, or we could make it, we can make it sunshiny, we can make it radiant, we can make it beautiful. It's our attitude. It's just our attitude. And our jobs are creative. Look, we do mitzvahs. You make a bracha. You're bringing godly energy into the universe. We're raising kids. For those of you who are in Eretz Yisrael, we're fulfilling the mitzvah of living in Eretz Yisrael. For those of you who are in Chutz La'aretz, you're chalishing. You want to come here already. That's also a mitzvah to want to come. Every one of us is fulfilling the mitzvah. We want Mashiach to come. And you guys are doing so many chassadim. You're doing so many mitzvahs of visiting the sick, and you're baking challah for people, and you're bringing food to people, etc., etc. So that's what we have to learn from the sun. We have to learn from the sun to do our job, whatever our tasks are, in a sunshiny way. With a sunshiny face. Coming out of our face should be shiny. And even if it's hard, I'll give you an example. I have a student, a precious student in one of the seminaries I teach in. And she wants to be a pediatric doctor or a pediatric, OBGYN nurse or a doctor. She wants to be involved in births. She wants to help people. She doesn't want to be a midwife. She wants to be a real, either a doctor or a nurse. I forgot which one. So she decided she's going to volunteer. She's a seminary. So we have, you have Tuesday afternoons to do volunteer work in this particular seminary. So she decided, she went to Shari Tzedek Hospital, and she has very good credentials. This is a girl who's already made, she has already a little bit of a resume, even though she's only 18, but she volunteered a lot. She went to Shari Tzedek Hospital. She says she wants to work in the maternity ward. She'll do anything. Give her any work. So she told me the other day, she worked in the maternity ward. She said, hundreds of diapers. And she's in seventh heaven. She worked there for about 8 hours, and she changed diapers and wiped tushies and wiped dribble. And she came back. She was radiant like the sun. She loves it, and she loves working with. I said, it's a big chesed because these nurses, they don't have time to change diapers. They're busy, but she was spent 8 hours changing. And she said, there's so many babies in Shire Tzedek Hospital. She was so excited, so many babies. And by the way, you don't just change a diaper once and then that's it. It's like every hour you have to check the diapers and whatever, and newborns and preemies and all kinds of things. So it was so funny. I was thinking to myself, I don't know if I was very happy to change diapers, but I don't know if I had such enthusiasm, like especially when it was like a real messy one. Like, was I really like jumping for joy, or. But that's what we're supposed to be. Whatever our task is, be like the sun. One more pasuk, then I'll let you go. Now, what does the sun do? The sun goes from one end of the Shemayim till the other end of the Shemayim. It goes from one end, it rises from one end, goes to the other end. And it shines on the whole planet. There's nothing that escapes its sunshine. Now, of course, you can have clouds blocking the sun, but Hashem made the sun just to show us how Hashem loves us so much. Hashem made the sun in such a way that it can take care of the whole planet. Even the North Pole and the South Pole, which are the furthest away, because when the Mabul happened, Hashem tilted planet Earth. So even the top and the bottom it's cold there, but it's not destroyed, because it doesn't like freeze in such a way that it destroys. So the sun does its job. And now that's the first part of the parak. We're going to finish the second part by answering Hashem next week. The second part of the parak tells us, okay, so the first part says, David Malch is saying to us, I just use the sun as an example, but use anything in your life, anything that's in the world of nature, anything. Meditate on it, think about it, listen to the planet, listen to the song of the trees and the birds. I told you yesterday, I told another class yesterday. I don't know how it is in England. Some of the ladies did nod their head, but here in Yerushalayim, in Eretz Yisrael, in Yerushalayim HaKodesh, at dawn, sunrise, right? It's sunrise, not dawn. Sunrise now in Yerushalayim is 6:30, 6:32, so a.m. So right before sunrise, for about 5 minutes before sunrise, all the birds start singing. Especially, and now we're in winter, so we have less birds, because a lot of birds do go away for the winter. They travel they have a vacation, they go to the south. And there's still a few birds here. Not a lot, but there are. Every morning before sunrise, they start singing. Bidyuk at sunrise. Now, I have an app on my phone. I like to know when sunrise is, and it starts playing me. It rings and it says there's an alarm on sunrise. When that alarm goes off, those birds are singing. They're singing and singing and singing. They sing for about a minute after sunrise, a minute or two, and then they stop. That's when they daven. That's when they're singing. The same thing happens at sunset. Now, sunset is already dark, right? It's getting dark. It's colder. The birds are going to go to sleep soon. But before sunset, they don't only sing, but they fly around like crazy in the sky. You can see it by the kotel. You can see it if you go the Nates minion or the minion, the Mincha minion, the Shkia minion. You see by the kotel, they fly around in crazy circles and dances and all of that. So whatever part of nature you have in your Dalet Amos, in your world, the first part of the Tehillim says, use it to come close to God. And this is universal. Every human being on planet Earth can do this. And that's why the people who were very much farmers and natives and let's say, in Africa, in Australia, the people who stayed in the olden ways, they didn't do technology, right? And certainly the Native American Indians. What do you call that word I'm looking for? The natives who don't go and they don't develop. I forgot the word I'm looking for. Somebody could write it or say it. They are so spiritual because they see nature and the creation and the creator and the coordinator. And they're very spiritual. They might get mixed up and start becoming idolatrous. That was a little bit of a problem. The indigenous people. The indigenous people are very spiritual people because they don't know technology. They just know you plant a seed, it comes out, stuff like that. They're very spiritual. We can also tap into that. Even though we're in the technology world, we can tap into beautiful nature. Look at nature. Everybody has the same shiloh when they see a rainbow. A rainbow is so beautiful, but we're supposed to be afraid of it, right? Because it represents like Hashem's not going to destroy us. It's a midas adin. How could it be midas adin if it's so beautiful? It's a good question, right? You look at babies when they're born; they're so beautiful. Okay, Gegis and Tehait, have a great Shabbos. I can't wait to see Rebbetzen Dove. She's here. Thank you, Nomi. I know you like nature. I know. Good. A few of you are very into. Listen, and also in England, you have your little tiny gardens. Yeah, I always joke you about that. You have your little tiny garden patches, and yes.